Join From Beer to the Bible every week as Irvin Lee and co-host Sarah Oliveira McDonald warn others of the consequences of drug and alcohol addiction by being the voice of faith-based recovery. Every week, Irvin and Sarah help people get access to the treatment and counseling they so desperately need. They explore the depths of addiction and give practical life examples of how to recover and develop a new rhythm of living. The show is gritty, authentic, and simply raw while being rooted in the love, faith, and hope of God. Welcome to From Beer to the Bible.
Hi, and welcome to From Beer to the Bible. I'm here today with our special guest, Chris Wilson of ASIC Recovery Services. Say hi to the viewers, Chris.
Hey, how are y'all?
Before we get started, please like, share, and subscribe at FromBeerToTheBible.com. We're going to come to you with our Bible verse of the day, and it's from Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. Today we're talking about accepting help and the recovery services that are available to any of you guys that are needing help and wanting help for a loved one or yourselves. So Chris owns ASIC Recovery Services. They do sober living, intensive outpatient counseling, and intervention services. So I wanted to kind of talk about each one of those and what they do for somebody and how they can help, because they can help individually and they can also help when you put them all together, and they can take someone to the next level. So it's not always about going to treatment. Treatment definitely helps the real alcoholic and addict, but so does 12-step recovery, and so does different services. And so you have to, you can call a place like ASIC Recovery and they can do a full assessment to figure out your level of care and what your loved one or you needs, whether it is just individual counseling, whether it is going to sober living and intensive outpatient, whether it is going to treatment. And a lot of times in recovery, someone might meet a level of care and then they get in the rooms and they realize they need something more. And you guys are really good about saying, okay, I think that we're not the right place for you. You need to go to a higher level of care and then come back to us later. So let's start with a little bit about that. Chris, you are a counselor. You did go to school to become an LCDC. That's a licensed chemical dependency counselor. And they are a little bit different in that we specialize in substance abuse recovery and all the things that go along with that. And so will you tell us a little bit about that and then the services that you provide?
For the counseling?
Yes, all of it.
All of it. Okay. Well, you mentioned a lot of that stuff with calling in regards to what level of care do I need. An assessment can be done. A lot of times, if a person's not able to stay stopped for, multiple days in a row, we can't take them in our house unless they can pass a UA,
Okay.
Which is usually about 3 days out because we alcohol test for 3 days.
Okay.
So if you can't stay stopped long enough to even do that, we're not the level of care, hands down.
Yeah.
Chances are there may be a detox that's needed or inpatient or both.
Yeah.
That being said, we are able to, take people that need that level of care. But with our sober living, it's also, considered transitional living. So we have our, as part of our program, we have our IOP. So which, is 3 days a week. It's 3-hour groups, Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Mm-hmm. We have them in morning and in evening. So if you work either way, we can make it happen. And then you see a counselor for individuals once a week.
Yeah.
We are 12-step recovery based. We do work with trauma, grief, boundaries, so codependency, which tends to be pretty common too as well. Yeah. So, and then we have our interventions as well. Sometimes there's someone who's not really quite there yet, but they're not ready to listen to family because you're too close. So having an intervention done where you can sit down with someone to facilitate it in a proper way can usually, have increases 90% chances is what it says for the NADAC for success rate to get somebody into treatment.
Yeah. So a little bit about intervention services. If you have a loved one that needs to go to treatment, can't stop using, and you don't know what to do, because a lot of times family members want to step in and it it tears the family apart, and they resist. What an interventionist does is works with the family prior to, and really gets a lot of needed information about the potential patient, and then comes together for a formal intervention. And it's not like what you see on TV. It's more of we're here because we love you. We're here because we care about you, and we want you to seek help. And so can you walk us through a little bit about how you do interventions and how you prep the family beforehand?
Absolutely. Usually it's gathering information about the whole, circumstance, what's going on, what led you to this point. What's the family dynamics in the whole thing? That can even go down to the placement of where you put people when you're circling them up to talk to them.
Sure.
Down to writing a letter, proofreading it to make sure that we don't cause any more harm. But a way to convey a message. It's really hard sometimes in the moment to stay in the moment without getting tangled up and pointing fingers and all that stuff. So having those done, in advance, and then having someone there to facilitate those things and having a plan. What does that look like, for inpatient? Have we ran benefits and whatnot? Have we talked to them? Is there availability? What about transportation? Do we have a bottom line? What does that look like for your loved one? Are they able to stay where they're at, or are we taking things away that they're holding on to? Are we helping creating a bottom so they can, come to surrender to say, hey, you know what, I'm willing to do it.
And let's stop there and talk a little bit about that, because that's very important, is having a bottom. We talk about enabling a lot. And so just share with our viewers or a loved one out there that is looking for services, what enabling does to an addict or alcoholic.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it keeps their lifeline going. It's another way that they can hold on to things that, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's a car, roof over the head. All these little things still help continue the process instead of realizing I don't have anything and now I'm on the streets.
Yeah.
And so the willingness becomes
greater. Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about raising the bottom, it's taking those things away from that individual that are perpetuating that addiction. And so for me, it was my humility. I didn't go into treatment for a long time because I thought going to treatment was the most humiliating thing that could ever happen to me. And so it wasn't because I didn't need it, but when the interventionist came into my home and shared his experience, strength, and hope, shared what treatment was and what it was not, I instantly felt a peace come over me, like, this is my way out. I need to accept this help so that I could be better, or I could become the person that God intended me to be. And so in my own intervention experience, that's what it did for me. And so that's what I want you guys to understand, is that an intervention is there to help you. And so you can call ASIC Recovery Services and ask for an intervention or request an intervention to help you and your family get a loved one to treatment and get them the help that they really need. You are not in this alone.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about intensive outpatient. So intensive outpatient is a level of care when somebody does not meet inpatient criteria. They might not be drinking all the time. They might not be using all the time, but they're having some consequences, or they potentially, have a job and they can't leave that job because they're supporting a family member, but it's still able to get you some of the help that you need to get sober. So talk a little bit about IOP.
Yeah, I mean, in two ways to look at it. Sometimes there's people that they don't fit the inpatient, or they want to give, outpatient a try first, because maybe it's not as severe as it could be. And so they're able to do that as an option. And if they're able to complete that, hopefully, and then move on and be successful. If not, we have to refer up to a higher level of care. The other thing is someone coming from inpatient and then coming, as a step down to continue that, the services and the treatment to support, like the sober living. It's another way to do it, exiting instead of entering.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So just to recap, the first level of care you might potentially need is medical detoxification. You can die from alcohol withdrawal. You can have a seizure and die. And so somebody who's drinking every day, in order them to to be safe, you want them to have a medical detoxification. I had a seizure in Walmart after day 4 of trying to detox myself, and I could have died. And that is not something that you want to do. So it's imperative to understand that you can die from some of these drugs. So it's important to go through the detoxification process. The next level of care is residential treatment, and that's when you go for a 30 to 90 day stay. And like I said before, you can call ASIC Recovery. You can call us at FromBeerToTheBible.com, and we can do an assessment and figure out what level of care you or your loved one needs. We talked a little bit about an intervention. So that's if you need help getting somebody to the next step or need help intervening on your loved one. There are tools for that too, and you don't have to do that alone. And then after someone goes through an intervention, detox, residential treatment, they come back home to the next level of care, if you will. I call it an insurance policy. If you go to IOP, you can go by yourself, or after you go through residential, it's an insurance policy. It's you're going to work again. You're in the evenings, you're getting education on drug and alcohol addiction. And then you're working on some other things, mental health, anxiety, depression. It's kind of a glorified counseling session, but you also get individual counseling sessions while you're there.
Well, there's sometimes you go back home to family, you go back to work, and some of these anxieties come back up, and you have stuff that you need to work through. And now you realize there's some other stuff I haven't dealt with.
Yeah.
So it's kind of able to dip your foot in back to what, society, and then realize there's some other stuff I may need to work on that I didn't think about while I was inpatient.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people go through residential treatment, and their discharge planner meets with them, and they are like, no, I'm not doing any more recovery stuff. I'm not going to sober living. I'm not going to intensive outpatient. What can a family member do to help that situation, or encourage that person that, IOP and sober living is, like I said, kind of an insurance policy. It helps.
It is. Honestly, statistics say the person is in a supportive environment for recovery, the higher the chances are for success.
Sure.
And so when you say an insurance policy, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You can't, it's hard just to go into like 30 days and change years of habits that were formed over 30 days. Sometimes it can happen, but it's hard. And so having some more, time in order to have accountability and to work through issues and stuff like that, and to change old habits and start new ones, it takes some time.
Yeah. So a step down program to me is just, and I want you to talk about a little bit about what that looks like, because they feel like they're in jail, when they go to residential treatment, but that's not what it is at all. You're being loved on for the first time in a long time. You're getting counseling services that you hadn't gotten before. You're working on your trauma. You're working on why you started in the first place. You're understanding 12-step recovery. A lot of times you find a God of your understanding that you never had before, or that you lost a long time ago. And I think some people just leave there and they just want to go home. They've been in this bubble and they just don't understand the significance that the next level of care has. And just to let you, sober living and IOP, you can go back to your day to day. You're not trapped. You're just going to 3 counseling sessions per week, 3 group sessions per week, and getting a little bit more education on what is going on with you.
Absolutely. And it's the question is what's the resistance about? And if it's really, you want to be out to your family and whatnot, you're still able to see them. You're still able to go to work. You're still able to do all these other things. You just got a different place that you're going to spend a little bit more time for accountability, and to have people around you with, like-minded people. When you go back to the family, they don't understand sometimes. All they've seen you for your past is what it looked like. And so there's an adjustment period for not just, the addict or alcoholic coming in, but the family. Yeah. There's a trust process that has to be built. And some of that actually is gained through knowing that you're willing to go and do whatever the extra mile, which is, the sober living and IOP. And then there's that level of surrender of like, I'm willing to do whatever I need to do for my recovery to have a new experience with life and a higher power.
Walk us through what, a month in sober living and IOP looks like, or 3 months of what that looks like.
Yeah. So we like to have a 3-month commitment, and I've had people go, "Ooh, I don't know," and I've sometimes I'll make exceptions with that. It's still just a commitment, but we've had people that have come in here recently. We had a guy come in and he committed to a month, and he stayed a year.
Awesome.
And now he left successfully, and he's doing well. The thing is it's just what we have made up in our mind of what it looks like. Same thing when we were going into inpatient. So, basically you wake up, chores got to be done by 10. We don't do prayer and meditation like some of those other places that are mandated, because I want to encourage them to find their spiritual journey and their spiritual path.
Yeah.
If I feel like I'm making them do it all the time, that's just, I feel like now they're just doing it because they're being made to.
Sure.
I'd rather them find out when they're not doing it, what it looks like.
Yeah.
And then when they realize I'm leaving that out and they go start doing it, they have that aha moment, like, oh, so God is part of this, and there's a difference, and he's making a difference in my life when I start doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we require them to do at least 30 hours. Actually, let me rephrase that, 20 hours of work a week as they're in the IOP process, or school or service work. And then they're required to do 3 outside meetings. We also have 3 in-house meetings. One of them's kind of an outhouse meeting, but it's Fort Worth, CA that they go to on Thursdays. And on Tuesdays, we have an in-house meeting. We also have, I'll go ahead and say it too, an aftercare. So anybody that completes or goes through at least a 3-month process or completes the IOP, whether they're in sober living or IOP alone, we offer up to a year for free, which is on Tuesdays at 6:30. And it's completely free because we want to make sure that they have that support for, that first year is the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to wrap up. I just wanted, what advice do you have for others still struggling and wanting help out there?
Surrender to win. I had that conversation the other day, and that's just what it is. It doesn't make sense. Sounds counterproductive, but trusting the process that other people have sobriety and they know what they're talking about, take suggestions, and be willing to do what's asked.
Absolutely. And if anybody needs intervention services, counseling services, recovery coaching, or sober living, they can find you at
ASICrecoveryservices.com.
And what's the phone number?
Ooh, now you got me.
ASICrecoveryservices.com, or you can reach us at From Beer to the Bible, and we're happy to point you that direction. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on today and sharing all that you do at ASIC Recovery Services and sharing a little bit about your personal story and testimony.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me out.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's From Beer to the Bible. Make sure to tune in next week when Irvin and Sarah gift you with even more addiction recovery information. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember, we're always there for you.